Well, welcome to Christ and Culture. This is Pastor Jeff Short. Glad to have you along for our discussion today. Today we're talking about Christian higher education. We're talking about the rising cost of Christian college, seminary, and educational opportunities for Christians to go into ministry and to get a Christian worldview. We're talking about these problems. And we're going to also talk about why that these costs are rising and what some of the Christian colleges and universities and seminaries are doing to combat the high cost of education today. So we have a couple reports. We'll start first with what is called the Royce Report, put out by Julie Royce, a Wheaton College graduate. I believe she graduated a few years after I went through Wheaton College. I might have run into her. I can't remember back in the day, but she has an online news site called the Royce Report, and she's going to be talking about what's going on at a couple Christian colleges and trying to combat the high cost of education. So let's pull that up and let me make commentary on that. And then we'll talk about maybe why some of the reasons for the high cost of Christian education specifically. So it says here that Gordon, Houghton, and Seattle Pacific cut tuition to make Christian education more accessible. And this was about a year and a half ago that they did that. And it says that Gordon College announced a 33% tuition cut Thursday, October 8th, joining two other Council for Christian Colleges and University members that have reset their tuition in the last 2 weeks in an effort to make private Christian education more accessible. Now, look at some of these figures. And I was surprised. I was really shocked because this is a lot more than the cost that I had to pay for a Christian education at Wheaton College. Look at this. The cut will go into effect in the fall of 2021, reducing Gordon's tuition to $25,250. So that's 1 year, just classes. That's tuition alone. $25,000 in tuition. So if you go there 4 years, you're going to be paying $100,000 for your education. I started to say 200 because I jumped ahead to find out what the entire cost for the year, including room and board, in addition to the tuition, and that is from $50,000 to $37,000. So you might have to pay up to $50,000 for an education at Gordon College, which is a liberal arts college similar to, say, a Wheaton College in Massachusetts. So if you went with the $50,000 figure, that would be $200,000 it would cost to get your education at a 4-year college. That is outrageous. I can't imagine how could you earn your way through college if you have to pay that kind of figure, $50,000 a year. I remember back in the day when I went to Wheaton College, I had to, out of necessity, after everything else was exhausted, I had to borrow $2,500 to get through my education at Wheaton College. $2,500, $2,500 I had to borrow. The rest, I was able to work during the summers, and I was able to work part-time at certain times during the Wheaton College year. So I was able to pay my tuition, and I didn't stay on campus, and I didn't take the meal plan. So I figured out how to live inexpensively away from campus, off campus, and I fed myself. I bought my own food, and I was able to make it. I don't know if I could have made it if I had gone on the at the dormitories and on the food meal plan, because those are very expensive. But it says here that according to the results of 2019 CCU survey, the non-denominational Christian college is now one of only 11 CCU schools to ever reset tuition. So they're cutting tuition. We're hoping that we're at the leading edge of a larger movement whereby Christian higher education can make larger commitments to becoming more affordable for more families, Gordon President Michael Lindsay told Religion News Services. Okay, the question is, why are prices going up? And why are Christian colleges the same position as the secular colleges? Why are they doing that? Why are they increasing their tuition and costs, just like all of the other colleges, non-religious, non-Christian colleges? Then they talk about Houghton College, and Houghton, New York, has opted for a different approach. On September 25th, the college, which is sponsored by the Wesleyan Church, announced a 53% decrease in tuition, with fall tuition rate at $15,000. So that's a little more affordable. You could get through a 4-year college for a little over $60,000. Still, that's a lot just on tuition. And $60,000. So we're talking about most students having to go into debt. And this is very relevant because in the news, we're hearing all about this pressure from the Democrats, the liberals, the leftists, to simply forgive all student debt. Just wipe it out. Just make working America pay for all of these students' debt, which is totally not fair. It's unjust. And why should the life decisions of college students be given priority over, say, people that go out of high school and take a job? Because now those people that take a job, they're having to foot the bill for the college experience of these college students. So Houghton is cutting their tuition by 53% because they felt it was too high. Well, it was too high, and it still is too high. Transparent pricing and accessibility were also key motivators for Seattle Pacific University, a Free Methodist school in Seattle that announced its own 25% tuition cut along with 4% cap and future tuition rate increases. 4%. 4% a year, is that it? Doesn't say. But again, all of these schools are saying that they want to deal with the high cost of tuition. Well, why did they allow the tuition rate to creep up and up and up and up and up? That brings us to maybe some of the answers to that question. And this comes from the Federalist. And it says, why is your college tuition so expensive? It's funding piles of diversity bureaucrats. So here we're getting to some of the things that a lot of Christian colleges don't like to talk about. They don't like to discuss this. This is a touchy topic on Christian campuses like Wheaton College. I remember receiving an email from the president of Wheaton College. It was maybe 6 months ago, or 6 months ago. And he said that the current director of multicultural engagement is leaving. And so now we're having to hire a new director of multicultural engagement in our diversity office. And do you have suggestions? And they sent this out to all the former students. And so I wrote and I said, my idea is to just leave this position unfulfilled. Don't waste money on it. It's just an expense that the college doesn't need to spend on, and use the money more wisely and put it toward the education of students. I didn't hear anything back, but I did later find out that they did hire another person to fulfill the office of multicultural engagement director. So they didn't take my advice, or probably others who wrote in saying the same thing. And this is one of the reasons this article is outlining, one of the reasons why colleges are so expensive. They're having to fund a whole cadre of diversity, equity, and inclusion directors and presidents and vice presidents and office workers and secretaries, and set up a whole administration for this diversity scam that's being foisted on colleges. And guess what? Christian colleges are doing the same thing. They're copying the world. They're falling right in line. I remember I've done videos on this channel and my other channel, Christian Answers, about Wheaton College. This has been 2, 3, 4 years ago, where I did a video analysis of a lot of the attitudes that were creeping into Wheaton College, and a lot of those were basically taken from the liberal, leftist, democratic talking points, and basically pushing the critical race theory, pushing equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I was alarmed by this because I realized, hey, this is not education. This is indoctrination. This is leftist indoctrination at Wheaton College. So you're already paying a premium to send your student to Wheaton College to get a Christian education. And what are they getting? They're getting indoctrination from the left. They're getting socialist-leaning, liberal, leftist, social Marxism, and you're having to pay for it when you send your student to Wheaton College and other universities like that. So let's read this article and find out more about why colleges are so expensive today. Once upon a time, universities viewed their core mission as helping students to acquire knowledge. And if you're a Christian college, that's biblical knowledge from a Christian worldview, critical thinking, and communication skills that would enable them to become more productive members of society. But higher education today has a new central concern: promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's what I found at Wheaton College, and I was disturbed with it when I saw it. And I didn't connect the two that, wow, this is going to raise tuition rates. This is going to increase and bloat the college budget. I didn't really even talk about that aspect of it. But here we are 3 or 4 years later, and sure enough, there is a crisis in Christian education. And I just read another article we don't have here today. Maybe I'll go over this at another program. But one of the problems in Christian education today is that the colleges and universities and seminaries around the country, under the evangelical arm of Protestantism, are in decline. Students are not enrolling. So some of these colleges are 25% lower than they were. Some are 30% lower. Some are 50% lower. Some are really, really hurting because students are not enrolling in the Christian colleges. I was just reading a report about my seminary, my Master of Divinity seminary, Trinity Evangelical Divinity School in Deerfield, Illinois, north of Chicago, and their enrollment is down, I think it's about 25%. So they're really hurting, and that's going to hurt, and that's going to really make it hard for the college to continue and the seminary to continue at their current budget. They've had to make budget cuts and lay off professors. And why is this happening? Well, Christian colleges and universities and seminaries have followed the ways of the world. Now, not all of them have. There is, and I've been there, I went and visited one weekend on what is called Preview Day, and that is the Southern Baptist Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky. And they also have a boys' college there, and they accept no federal funds. They do not take anything from the government, no guaranteed student loans from the government, and they require that the students find financing through other means other than the government. And what has happened? They are not hurting financially, and they're not hurting in enrollment. In fact, they're up. Their enrollment is up. Now, why is that? Because you don't have government regulations and strings attached to all your programs, and you're free to be Christian and teach what is doctrinally correct and morally correct, and you're not worrying about diversity quotas, and you're not worrying about passing muster with these government entities that require that you fulfill all their requirements as far as LGBTQ, affirmation, and all of the other left-wing leftist propaganda. Southern Baptist Seminary doesn't have to put up with that because they don't have the government involved in the life of their institution. So that's a shining light in a pretty depressing field, because all these other Christian colleges and seminaries have been taking government money, and they have to play to the tune that the government plays. So let's read on. To gauge just how large this effort is, especially relative to other college priorities, we have collected information from 65 major universities, representing nearly 1/6 of all students in four-year institutions in the United States. Bloated DEI staff numbers. Diversity, D. Equity, E. And inclusion, I. We discovered that overall the number of DEI dedicated staff is dramatically out of proportion to other programs serving higher education goals. For example, the typical university devotes 4.2 times as many staff to promoting DEI initiatives than they do helping disabled students get reasonable accommodations, and the latter is required by law. On average, DEI staff outnumbered history professors by 40%. Overall, there are 3.4 people working to promote DEI for every 100 tenured or tenure-track faculty members. So there's this bloated hierarchy of basically, essentially worthless people promoting this worthless program. I don't mean worthless themselves individually. I'm saying they're worthless in their position because they are promoting something that is totally unnecessary, in fact, actually harmful, because they're using race as a measurement and skin color as a measurement of who should be in college and who shouldn't, and who should get benefits and who shouldn't. And they have all of these legal and policy rules that have to be followed, and if you're not following them, you will be shunned, and all kinds of bad things. Some universities had strikingly large number of people with DEI responsibilities in their job titles. At the University of Michigan, for example, that's the state I was born in and spent a lot of time in, 163 people have formal responsibilities for providing DEI programming and services. 163 people. University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill has more than 13 times as many people devoted to promoting DEI as providing services to people with disabilities. Georgia Tech has 3.2 times as many DEI staff as it does history professors. The University of Virginia boasts 6.5 DEI staff for every 100 professors. So you have this totally wasteful programming happening at colleges, universities, and also Christian seminaries, to prove to the world, to virtue signal that they aren't racist, that they aren't anti-gay, or that they aren't anti-women or anti-minorities, and to prove that they are on board with the critical race theory beliefs. We should note that our methodology for counting DEI staff was extremely conservative, so there are probably a lot more that they didn't even count. We counted only those positions with formal responsibilities for promoting DEI. We excluded faculty and staff in academic departments like African American and gender studies, even though they clearly promote DEI goals in addition to engaging in traditional teaching and research. That's another thing. When I was investigating Wheaton College, I found that there was a lot of talk in the publications, in the alumni magazine publications, and a lot of the activities. There was a lot of talk of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a lot of so-called social justice discussion and talk and chapel services. And they're totally on board with this idea that America is systemically racist and the problem is white people, and that marginalized people, so-called, need to have special privileges to equal out things, and talks about reparations and It's the whole leftist liberal talking points, and it's taken from the liberal leftist academic situations in the state-owned colleges and campuses, and now it's part and parcel of Christian colleges and universities and seminaries. One of my old seminaries, Fuller Seminary, I got my doctorate there. It is totally woke, totally into the equity, inclusion, and diversity playing field. In fact, they just hired their new president of the entire seminary. It's a Dr. Goatley. And lo and behold, I've already done a video on him 3 years ago when he came to Chautauqua Institution in Western New York and gave a talk. And one of the things that you find out about this Dr. Goatley is that every time he talks, every time he speaks, every time I've ever heard him utter a sentence, he is always talking about race and critical race theory and pushing evangelicalism deeper and deeper into wokeness. And I thought, this is disaster, because now he's the president of the entire Fuller Seminary. And we thought that Fuller Seminary was woke before. They're going to be about as woke as you can get. And my prediction is that they're going to lose students. They're going to suffer worse declines than they have been suffering. And they have been suffering major, major declines. And their budget, their official budget at Fuller Seminary is in shambles. And they've been losing millions and millions of dollars every year in their overall budget, going deeper into debt. And they don't connect the two, that probably the reason they're suffering is because, in large part, they have gone woke, just as this article says. We also did not count many administrators who tout DEI messages but do not have DEI in their job titles. Finally, we excluded staff with responsibilities of ensuring compliance with Title IX and other legal anti-discrimination requirements. Basically, we only counted those positions that universities wanted to create, not positions that they had to fill. Even with these limits, the average university listed more than 45 people as having DEI responsibilities, diversity, equity, and inclusion. What, one may ask, is all this effort accomplishing? The answer appears to be not much. Meanwhile, universities we examined have surveyed their students to determine how they view campus climate. One would expect campuses with larger DEI staffs would be perceived as providing a more positive, welcoming environment. In general, that's not the case. For example, the University of Michigan boasts the largest DEI staff, yet there's a sizable gap between how white and non-white students perceive the campus climate. In 2016 survey found that 73% of the school's white students were satisfied or very satisfied with their campus climate. But among the minority students, with Asian students notably excluded from the survey category, why would they be excluded? They're minority. That's interesting. That figure dropped to 62% for undergraduates and 55% for graduate students. So the higher graduate students are even less satisfied. Mississippi State University, an institution with far less DEI infrastructure, fared better. A similar survey, they asked students if they felt accepted, respected, and appreciated, arguably a higher standard bar to meet than simply being satisfied with the climate. Despite the higher bar and significantly smaller DEI staff, 72% of Mississippi State students reported being accepted, respected, and appreciated by students different from them. Among African American students, 68% reported being accepted, respected, and appreciated by students who were different from them, not far below the overall result. Among Hispanic students, the figure was 78%, even higher than the overall results. So it says here, subsidizing activism, not helping students. Universities, especially those that are publicly funded, should be welcoming to all students, and it is admirable that inclusion is a priority for many institutions of higher learning. But our work suggests large DEI bureaucracies fail to make a positive contribution to campus climate. And I think they actually hurt the morale of a campus climate, because I remember at reading some of the alumni literature at Wheaton College. I think it's insulting to students, white students, that they're being told that they're racist, whether they know it or not. And that's basically the message of critical race theory, CRT. Now, at Wheaton College, the original director of multicultural engagement, I think her name was Sheila Caldwell, she actually had on a preferred reading list Ibram X. Kendi's book, Being an Anti-Racist, which was pure critical race theory. So she was pushing this notion that white people are racist in and of themselves. They're guilty of sins and crimes they never actually committed, but they're part of a system, she claims, that's white, and just by being white, you're discriminatory. And that really hurts the campus climate, because you're putting people and making them guilty and trying to shame them when they haven't done anything racist and haven't shown any racist tendency to begin with, but just because they're white, they're labeled racist. Rather than being an effective tool for welcoming students from different backgrounds, DEI personnel may be better understood as a signal of adherence to ideological, political, and activist goals. Employing dozens of DEI professionals, chief diversity officers, assistant deans of diversity, directors for inclusion excellence, appears to work better as a jobs program subsidizing political activism than a means of improving campus climate. So, what is taking place is just a bloated bureaucracy wasting money of parents who are sending their students to college. High DEI staffing levels suggest that these programs, like many other administrative initiatives at universities, are bloated relative to academic pursuits. It is fair to wonder whether reducing administrative bloat and reducing costs would do more to promote college access and inclusion than the best efforts of any of these diversity officers. In light of our findings, state legislators and donors who fund these institutions may wish to examine DEI efforts more closely to ensure university resources are being used effectively. And that was written by Jay Green of the Heritage Foundation. So this is one of the reasons why Christian colleges, universities, and seminaries are hurting financially. Many of them have gone woke. Some have not gone fully woke. I mentioned Fuller Seminary. It's almost fully woke. And now with the addition of this Dr. Goatley, a black professor from Duke University, who is now the president of Fuller Seminary, newly anointed president, he will be pushing even more to make Fuller Seminary a critical race teaching woke institution. And this is going to require hiring more diversity officers and multicultural inclusion positions, all in an effort to promote a left-wing ideology that is really, really hurting and dividing our nation rather than helping it. And it's going to hurt our Christian colleges and universities and seminaries as well. So we need to pray that God brings some sanity to these people and brings them to understand that they are driving up costs with worthless positions of critical race and diversity, inclusion, and equity, and it's unnecessary. Talk to you later. Talk to you in another program. God bless.